Hello, everyone. Today, I'm going to share with you a story that will touch your heart, The One Left Behind, about a young girl's journey from abandonment to building her own future. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where are you listening from and what time is it there? Drop it in the comments below. Maybe you're listening from New York, midnight, or on my morning commute in London. I love knowing where all the people joining me for this story are from. This isn't just a story about being left behind. It's about what happens when the one they discarded rises. When Kaylin's parents told her, "Your sister needs stability, you'll manage," and drove her to a stranger's house at just 12 years old. They never imagined that quiet girl would one day become the strongest person in the story. Get ready for an emotional journey, from the pain of betrayal to the power of finding your own voice. And now, let me tell you about Kaylin. The light slanted through half-drawn curtains when I walked into our living room that afternoon. I was 12, backpack still hanging from one shoulder, socks damp from walking through puddles after school. Something in the air felt different, like it had been holding its breath for hours. Mom sat stiffly on the couch, knees pressed together, hands clasped too neatly in her lap. Dad stood nearby, pacing in small, sharp lines across the carpet. The room felt smaller than usual, as if the walls were slowly closing in. "Kaylin, honey, come sit," Mom said, her voice sugar-coated but shaking. I remember thinking maybe I'd left the milk out again, or maybe it was about my math grade. But no one was smiling. Dad didn't even look at me when I sat on the armchair across from them. He rubbed the back of his neck once, then exhaled like he was tired of pretending. "We've hit a rough patch," he said. "Financially." Mom jumped in. "Things have been tight for a while." And that was an understatement. Dad had lost his job at the investment firm 6 months ago. The arguments at night had grown louder, their whispers more urgent. I'd seen the stack of bills with red stamps piling up on the kitchen counter. "We've talked it over, and we had to make a very, very hard decision," Mom continued. Then came the words that cracked the floor beneath me. "Callista needs stability. You're stronger. You'll manage." At first, I didn't understand. I blinked. Manage what? Mom gave a tight, apologetic smile. "You'll be staying with another family, just for a little while." I looked at both of them, waiting, wishing one would laugh and say it was a test or a lesson in gratitude. Instead, Dad said, "The Millers have a nice home. They've been fostering for years." The word foster buzzed in my ears like a mosquito I couldn't swat away. "Did I do something wrong?" I asked. "No, sweetie," Mom said too quickly. "This isn't about you. It's just what's best for now." And I looked at her, then at Dad. Why not Callista? Silence. Not even a flinch, not even a fake excuse, just silence. Later, I learned the whole story. Dad's job loss had spiraled into a depression that made him unstable. The debt had grown insurmountable. A social worker had been assessing our family situation for weeks. Mom had convinced them that Callista, my 10-year-old sister, suffered from anxiety and needed stability, while I was resilient and adaptable. The social worker, overworked and handling too many cases, had agreed to this arrangement as a temporary solution. The Millers were a good foster family with an excellent record. That night, I didn't eat dinner. I sat in my room, legs tucked under me on the bed, staring at the blank wall across from my desk. My duffel bag sat by the door, half-zipped, half-hearted. They said I was strong, but they didn't ask. They didn't even ask if I was scared. They just decided. The next morning, they followed through. It was overcast, like the sky itself couldn't muster the courage to be blue. I slid into the back seat while Mom shut the car door behind me. Callista didn't say goodbye, didn't even come downstairs. The drive was quiet, the kind of quiet where even the tires seemed too loud. Dad kept his hands tight on the steering wheel, eyes fixed ahead. "Let's get this over with," he muttered. My throat went dry. I looked out the window, watching telephone poles blur into each other. Mom turned once to glance at me. "You'll like them. Kaylin, the Millers are good people." I didn't respond. When we pulled up, the house was beige and tidy with flower pots lining the porch. Mr. and Mrs. Miller stood outside smiling, their golden retriever wagging its tail like this was the start of a sleepover. Dad didn't get out right away, just opened his door, stood, and motioned for me to follow. Mom touched my shoulder. "Come on, sweetheart." I grabbed my duffel. It felt heavier than it should have. Mrs. Miller bent slightly, her voice sweet but unfamiliar. "Hi, Kaylin. We're so happy to have you here." I nodded. My parents didn't hug me. They shook hands with the Millers like they were handing over a rental. Dad looked at his watch. "We should get going." Mom knelt and kissed my forehead. "Be good, okay? We'll check in soon." But I could already see it in their eyes. They weren't coming back. I watched them pull away, their tail lights vanishing past the corner. I stood there longer than I should have, until Mrs. Miller gently touched my elbow and guided me inside. My room smelled like lavender and floor polish. Too clean, too perfect. A window let in light from the backyard. The bed was neatly made with a soft yellow comforter. But it wasn't mine. Nothing was. I sat down, duffel still in my lap. My fingers traced the seams, the zipper, the patch of duct tape on the side. And then the phrase looped back. "You'll manage." Manage what? Being left. 2 years passed like this: school, homework, dinner with the Millers, repeat. No calls from home, no letters, no visits, just silence. The Millers weren't perfect. No family is, but they tried. Mrs. Miller worried too much, always checking if I'd eaten enough or if I needed help with homework. Mr. Miller was sometimes too stern, expecting me to follow their house rules without question. They disagreed on how to handle my quietness. She thought I needed space. He believed I needed structure. Yet despite their flaws, they showed up every day. They came to parent-teacher conferences. They remembered what foods I liked. They never made me feel like a burden. When I was 14, Mrs. Miller brought me to what she called a family birthday celebration for some distant cousin turning 7. I don't remember his name. What I remember is the sound of the restroom door swinging open and shut behind me every 5 minutes. That was where they sat me, a folding chair next to the restroom, the only seat without a tablecloth. I didn't even notice until I reached for my cup and realized the edge of the table was sticky. Before I could ask to move, a woman with a tight bun and clipboard handed me a name tag. "K. Malden, volunteer." It read, my last name was Malden, and I wasn't a volunteer, but I didn't say anything. I just peeled off the backing and stuck it to my cardigan. Across the room, I saw the real family table full of aunts and uncles and cousins laughing over chicken wings and lemonade. Someone had brought balloons. There was even a tiered cake with cartoon animals on top. No one looked my way. The Millers were off chatting with someone near the punch bowl. I stood still, arms tucked close, like maybe if I didn't move, I'd blend into the beige wall behind me. Someone passed by and smiled politely. Another walked past like I wasn't there at all. Then I saw her. Callista. She arrived an hour in, perfectly timed, perfectly dressed in a soft blue sundress, gold hoops, and a pair of wedge sandals that clicked confidently across the floor. My sister didn't see me right away. She was too busy air-kissing relatives and accepting compliments on her hair, her posture, her glow. Then she spotted me. We locked eyes for a second. I stood. I waited. She walked past. "Excuse me," she said, barely a glance. That was it. No hi, Kaylin, No, how have you been? Not even a nod, just a cold, practiced dismissal. Like I was in the way, like I was the help. A murmur floated behind me. Is that her, the foster one? It didn't come from a stranger. It came from Aunt Rachel, the same woman who used to braid my hair at Thanksgiving. I sat back down slowly. My heart beat fast, but my hands stayed still. My eyes didn't water. Not yet. Instead, I watched Callista throw her head back in laughter as someone told a story about her winning a spelling bee in third grade. They never talked about the time I pulled her out of the river after she fell through the ice. That story didn't shine enough, I guess. I spent the next hour helping pass out cups, refilling soda pitchers, carrying napkins. Someone asked me where the trash bags were. Another asked if I was new help. Mrs. Miller noticed and rushed over, trying to cover. "She's just helping out today," she said brightly. It's good to give her something to do. Something to do. Not someone to see. Not someone to know. Just something. I smiled through it, pretended it didn't sting, but my stomach twisted. The way it does when you realize you're the only one who brought a gift to a party that wasn't for you. That night, back at the Millers, I pushed my food around my plate until Mr. Miller looked up. "Something happened today," he asked gently. I set my fork down. They pretended I wasn't their daughter. Mrs. Miller paused mid-sip. Mr. Miller didn't blink. "Some people," he said slowly, "only value what shines in public, and sometimes that's not family." I nodded, but I didn't speak. I didn't cry either. I just lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, and I thought, if being invisible kept them comfortable, then I'd stay silent. But not because I was weak, because silence can be sharp, and one day I'd learn to aim. If I was going to be invisible, I figured I might as well learn how to listen in the dark. By the time I turned 15, I'd perfected silence, not the bitter, arms crossed the kind that sees everything, remembers everything, and pretends like it doesn't. The Millers, bless them, never asked me to smile when I didn't want to. They threw me a small dinner at home, just the three of us, and a cake with uneven white frosting. 3 candles flickered in the middle. Mr. Miller smiled at me gently. Not 15, just 3 fives. 5 dreams, 5 reasons to smile, 5 people who love you. I didn't say it out loud, but I knew that last part wasn't true. 5 was generous. Later that night, after the dishes were done and Mrs. Miller went to bed early with a migraine, I curled up on the couch with her old laptop. My school project was an excuse. I knew what I was really going to do. I typed in my sister's name, Callista Malden. The first thing that popped up was her influencer page. Hundreds of posts, all flawless. Sunlight pouring through bay windows, artfully placed coffee mugs, her hair always curled, always shiny. Her bio read, "Only child, future leader." Only child. I clicked through her photos. Birthday parties, beach vacations, holiday dinners. My parents were always by her side, usually laughing or holding her hand like some prize. And then I saw it, a Christmas photo at my grandparents' house. I remembered that day. I was there right next to her. We'd both been wearing ugly sweaters. But in this version of the photo, I was cropped out cleanly like I never stood there. Another image, a summer barbecue. I'd carried those chairs out to the lawn, handed out lemonade. I wasn't in a single frame. One post stopped me cold, grateful for my parents who've always supported me. The word always echoed louder than anything else. I stared at the screen, not angry, just hollow. It wasn't the lies that cut deepest. It was the ease with which they'd rewritten the past, made a new one where I was never part of the story. 2 days later, a white envelope showed up in the mailbox with my name scribbled in familiar handwriting, Callista's. I waited until after dinner to open it, sitting at the edge of my bed with my lamp on and my heart somehow both heavy and numb. Inside was a birthday card. Plain, no glitter, no image, just embossed gold letters that said, "Wishing you well." There was no message inside, just a $5 Starbucks gift card. No happy birthday. No love, Callista. No note at all. $5. I flipped the card over, checked inside the envelope again. Nothing else. No second slip. No handwriting hiding in the corner. I held it in my lap for a long time. Then I got up, walked quietly to the kitchen, grabbed a pair of scissors, and sliced the card clean in half, top to bottom. I kept the gift card. I wasn't going to be petty, but I wasn't going to forget. A week later, a girl from my math class caught up with me in the hallway. "Hey, Kaylin," she said, pulling at her ponytail. So weird question. But did you really run away when you were little?" I blinked. "What?" She shifted awkwardly. I follow your sister on Insta. She posted something about how you left the family, like chose to." I froze. She said I left. The girl looked worried. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to stir anything up. I just thought maybe it wasn't true." I nodded slowly. "Thanks for telling me." That night, I didn't go to sleep right away. I pulled up an old parenting form Mrs. Miller had once mentioned. It took me a while, but I found it buried in a thread about coping with difficult teens. Vera's username was some variation of her maiden name, but I recognized her tone. She'd written, "It was hard when Kaylin left us, but we respect her independence. Sometimes children make choices you can't understand, and you have to let them go." I sat there staring at the sentence. She'd made it sound noble, tragic even, as if I'd packed my things one morning and vanished because I was exploring my independence. I printed the post, folded it slowly with the care of someone handling something toxic. Then I slipped it into a small tin box I kept under my bed, the same box that held my middle school report cards. Some photos the Millers had taken of me, smiling at their 4th of July BBQ, and now a piece of fabricated history. Later that night, I lit a single match in my room, not to burn anything, just to watch it glow. That tiny flicker, that short, hot life, I stared at the flame until it came dangerously close to my fingers. Then I blew it out. "They rewrote history," I whispered. "So I'll write the ending." 3 years passed. I finished high school with decent grades, a couple of true friends, and a quiet reputation. I never made waves, but I watched everything. By 18, I'd outgrown tears and learned the value of restraint. The Millers, still kind, still genuine despite their imperfections, encouraged me to consider one final attempt at reconnection. "Closure," Mr. Miller had said gently. "It's not for them, it's for you." So, when the invitation came, an invite for a family brunch honoring Callista's internship at the governor's office, I didn't delete it. I clicked yes, and I baked cookies. They weren't fancy, just sugar cookies cut in leaf shapes and glazed in pale peach. I boxed them in parchment paper and tied a ribbon, a small gesture of goodwill. On Sunday morning, I got dressed in a navy dress that hit just below my knees, no makeup, and shoes that didn't hurt. The Millers drove me, offering warm smiles and soft encouragement, and I promised myself I'd walk in tall no matter what. The venue was a converted barn, modernized into a rustic chic event space. Glass chandeliers hung from reclaimed beams. A live violinist played something classical but upbeat near the bar. I walked in, clutching the cookie box with both hands. No one greeted me. I spotted Vera from across the room, hair styled, glass in hand. Greg stood beside her, talking to someone in a gray suit. Callista was at the center, glowing in a butter-yellow sheath dress. Cameras seemed drawn to her. At the check-in table, A young hostess flipped through the printed guest list. "And you are," she asked, not looking up, "Kaylin Malden." She scanned the list again, slower this time. "I don't see that name. Maybe extra family." She reached into a drawer and pulled out a blank tag. "We've had a few distant cousins added last minute. Let's do this." She scribbled K. Malden Extended Family on the tag in Sharpie and handed it to me with a half smile. I didn't correct the spelling. She waved toward a small table in the back corner of the room, near the hallway leading to the restrooms. A single folding chair waited beside a utility cart. I walked there slowly, past tables set with white linen and place cards bearing full names in elegant calligraphy. My table had none. As I sat down, I realized I wasn't even on the seating chart. People laughed and clinked glasses under twinkling Edison bulbs while I unfolded my napkin in silence. No one came over. No one asked if I was doing well. A few glanced and then turned away quickly, like I was the answer to a question they weren't ready to ask. I watched Callista float through the room, all handshakes and shoulder pats. She tossed her head back when she laughed. I used to do that, too, before I learned what came after the laughter stopped. A group of young women, friends of hers maybe, stood near the bar. As Callista approached them, one of them pointed in my direction. "Is that your sister?" she asked. Callista gave a small, controlled laugh and shrugged. "She used to be. Not really part of us anymore." I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. I just gripped the cookie box tighter, as if I might need to throw it like a grenade. Instead, I stood and walked slowly toward the dessert table. Vera intercepted me halfway there. "Kaylin," she said, as if surprised. "You look nice." I didn't respond. She opened her arms for a hug. I took a deliberate step back. Her smile thinned. "Still dramatic, I see." I looked her square in the eye. "And you've always needed someone quiet enough to erase?" She blinked. Then, as if I'd spoken in a language she didn't recognize, she turned and walked off. I reached the dessert table. Carefully, I placed the cookie box beneath the flower centerpiece, roses and eucalyptus. Expensive, overdone. Then I slipped the folded printout of the parenting forum post, the one where Vera had claimed I left the family by choice under the box. No words, no explosion, just the truth sitting in plain sight. As I turned to leave, the violinist changed tempo. A new song floated across the room, but I didn't register the tune. I walked through the door and didn't look back, not for dessert, but for clarity. That clarity didn't show up like thunder. It settled in me slowly like dust after a storm. It was a few weeks later, early August, and I was folding t-shirts on my bed, a half-zipped suitcase sitting open on the floor. Boston was calling college dorms, late-night coffee runs, syllabus shock. Whatever came next, it was mine to walk into. The call came just before dinner. "Miss Malden," the voice on the other end asked. "This is Arthur Kim. I'm the estate lawyer for Well. I handled your grandmother Rosendaro's affairs. There's something she left you. She was quite specific. Could you come by my office this week?" I blinked. I thought everything was already handled. He chuckled softly. "Apparently not. This wasn't in the will. It was personal." The office was downtown, an old converted house turned legal suite with dark oak walls and brass fixtures that clicked when the AC turned on. Mr. Kim greeted me with a kind but unreadable smile. "I think she wanted you to have this in private," he said, pushing forward a thick manila envelope and a worn leather-bound journal. I reached for both slowly. The envelope had my name written in that curly, dramatic handwriting I'd watched her use on Christmas cards, the way she always added an extra loop on the K. Inside was a small silver key and a note on yellowed stationery. "You were always the one who listened. This is yours. Don't let them take it from you. Underneath, a postscript. Look in the back pocket of the journal. That's the real heart of it. My hands shook slightly as I opened the journal. Inside, pages and pages of affirmations, clipped memories, Polaroids, receipts from the craft store where we used to go, things I didn't know she'd kept. And tucked into the back, folded 3 times, was a coloring page I'd made in 2nd grade. She'd written on the back, Kaylin, age 7, told me, no one claps for quiet kids. I clapped anyway. I didn't cry, but I closed the journal like it was something sacred. 2 days later, they showed up. It was a humid afternoon. I was sorting out textbooks in the Miller's front room, checking if I could afford the new edition or just live with the used one. When the doorbell rang, Mrs. Miller glanced at me, then at the clock. I'm not expecting anyone. I opened the door. Greg and Vera, not together exactly. They stood like co-workers who'd been paired for a project they both hated. Greg's shirt was wrinkled. Vera wore oversized sunglasses and that tight-lipped smile she used when playing kind hostess. Hi, Kaylin, she said, like we hadn't seen each other in years. Can we come in, Mrs. Miller appeared behind me. Of course, she said, always too gracious. They sat on the couch like guests at a job interview, trying not to sweat. I stayed standing. So, Greg began, rubbing his hands. We heard about your scholarship. That's good for you. I nodded once. Vera leaned forward, voice soft. Listen, we know things have been strained. I didn't answer. She kept going. But your grandmother's estate came up and, well, things haven't been easy for us lately. Job market's tight. You know, we're just trying to stay afloat. Greg cleared his throat. And we thought maybe we could help each other, like family. I narrowed my eyes. How would that look? Well, Vera said quickly, just something small. If there's any support Grandma left, it could be shared fairly for everyone's benefit. Is that what you call fair now? I asked. She blinked. Excuse me? I walked over to the bookshelf, pulled the envelope from where I'd tucked it behind a dictionary, and placed it on the table between us. The key still inside. She left it to me, not to us, not to be shared. Greg shifted. Come on, Kaylin. We raised you, fed you. No, I said calmly. You handed me off. Vera stood, voice rising. This is ridiculous. It's just a gesture, a token. I'm being clear, I said. This isn't yours to ask about. You gave up that right? Mrs. Miller, still silent, moved to open the door. They left without another word. That night, I lay on my bed, the journal open across my lap. I flipped through the pages again. One entry caught my eye. Don't ever apologize for surviving in silence. Some people only hear you when you shout. Below it, in different ink, she'd written, You're not the one who left. They are. I closed the journal, set it beside my packed duffel, and turned off the lamp. 2 days later, in my dorm room in Boston, I unpacked slowly. Roommate hadn't arrived yet, which was a blessing. I placed the journal in the top drawer of my desk, slid the envelope in beside it, closed the drawer, then locked it. Leaning back in my chair, I whispered to no one in particular, if they want to break me again, they'll have to work a lot harder. After locking away the journal and key in my dorm room desk, I thought maybe, just maybe, I could finally breathe without looking over my shoulder. The fall semester of sophomore year had just started, and between tutoring at the Student Center and organizing weekly financial literacy workshops for incoming freshmen, I was finally feeling like I belonged somewhere. Not as someone's forgotten daughter, just Kaylin, a woman trying to build something that no one could take away this time. The Millers had moved to a small apartment just a few miles from campus. Just to be close, just in case. Mrs. Miller had said, squeezing my hand. Mr. Miller had found work as a night security guard at the university library. They weren't perfect, but they were mine in all the ways that mattered. But peace, it seemed, was a luxury my past had no intention of granting. It started with an email. The subject line read, "Meeting request, concern about family matters." I clicked, eyebrows raised. It was from Dr. Myers, the chair of my department. We'd only spoken briefly once during orientation. Now he wanted to see me. I showed up to his office at 9:00 a.m. sharp the next morning. His expression was gentle but guarded, like someone walking on eggshells in a room already cracked. "Kaylin," he said, gesturing toward the seat across from his desk, "I want you to know this conversation stays between us, but a message came through the faculty board inbox anonymously." I sat up straighter. "Okay," he sighed. "It made some concerning claims that you've been neglecting your family during a period of significant hardship." The tone was personal. I didn't flinch. "Did it mention names?" He hesitated. "It didn't have to. There were phrases, things like, 'She used to be generous,' or 'We raised her better than this.'" "Callista?" I said under my breath. "Or Vera." Dr. Myers tilted his head slightly. "I wasn't going to speculate, but your mentor in the community finance program forwarded me a similar email. Same wording, different address." I forced a smile. "Of course, because this is what they do when they can't control something anymore." Back in my dorm, I pulled up LinkedIn out of curiosity. And there it was, a public comment under a post about college students earning while studying. It was Vera's account. Same profile picture she'd used since 2012. "We raised Kaylin better than this. It's painful to watch her turn her back on everything we taught her. No context, no tagging, just planted poison." I took a screenshot, saved it, then turned off the Wi-Fi. That night, I walked the 3 blocks to the Miller's place. They'd moved into an apartment near the campus after I got accepted to Boston College. Just to be close, just in case. I hadn't told them about the emails, but they read me like only real family can. "Mrs. Miller opened the door and took one look at me. "They did something again, didn't they?" I nodded. "They're trying to ruin everything I've built." Mr. Miller, sitting on the couch with a crossword, looked up and said simply, "That means they know you've built something worth ruining." It hit like a brick through glass. I didn't cry. I wasn't going to give them even that. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and said, "I think I need help writing a cease and desist." Mrs. Miller grabbed her glasses. "Let's do it properly." Then, we spent 2 hours drafting. I used words like harassment, libel, and emotional interference. She suggested adding phrases like intention to cause reputational damage. Mr. Miller contributed with his old typewriter's satisfying clacks. He said it helped him think better. By midnight, we had a letter sharp, calm, legally sound. I wasn't sure if I'd send it, but just having it made me feel like I was no longer playing defense. 2 weeks passed. Midterms were approaching. Things quieted until the envelope came. No return address, just my name typed in block letters. Inside was a legal-looking document from some law firm I'd never heard of. "To Ms. Callan Malden, we write on behalf of our clients, Mr. Gregory Malden and Mrs. Vera Malden, in regard to your apparent abandonment of family responsibilities and financial neglect as the next of kin. Your recent actions, or lack thereof, have caused emotional and potential economic distress to our clients." I stopped reading after that. I sent a photo of the letter to Priya, my friend from the law clinic on campus. Her reply came in seconds. "This is trash. It's written to scare you, not to stand up in court. But her next text read, "Still, that kind of thing can ruin your peace." And she was right, because suddenly I was reading every email twice, wondering if anyone else had gotten something, wondering what other lies were circulating in whispers behind closed doors. The letter wasn't dangerous, but it was corrosive. That evening, I sat on my bed, journal in one hand, phone in the other. Then I opened my social media account, the one I never used, and typed, "I've remained silent out of respect, not weakness. No hashtags, no names, no drama." But the silence had cracked. I closed my laptop slowly, then whispered to the quiet, to the walls, to whatever energy still tried to haunt me, "I won't play defense anymore." I hadn't touched the tin box since that day at the brunch, but now, back in my apartment, the air still thick from the tension of legal threats and digital sabotage, I opened it slowly. Inside, the paper had yellowed slightly at the edges. The parenting forum post still read the same. Vera's neatly cruel words preserved in screenshot ink. "It was hard when Kaylin left us, but we respect her independence." I'd spent years collecting pain, folding it into drawers, boxing it into corners of my mind I didn't want to touch. But now I saw those receipts differently. They weren't proof of my trauma anymore. They were tools, and I was done waiting for someone else to swing them. I took out my phone and called Jalen. Jalen wasn't just smart. He was the kind of smart that made people nervous. The kind that cracked passwords before lunch and built spreadsheets for fun. We'd met during a campus entrepreneurship seminar where he'd taught me how to budget for student loans using pie charts and memes. "Hey," I said, "I need your help, and I need you to not ask why until I'm finished." There was a pause, then a soft chuckle. "You got it. What's up?" I told him everything. Well, almost everything about the whispers I remembered from my childhood, the college fund my grandmother had apparently set aside, and how, after she passed, the money vanished. "I just need to know if it ever existed, and if so, where it went." "I'll check," he said, his tone dropping into business mode. "Do you have the name of the estate or anything official?" I read him the name of the law firm that had handled my grandmother's will. Within a week, he called me back. "You might want to sit down," Jalen said, not joking. I was in the student library sipping a burnt cappuccino. "Oh, your grandmother created 2 trust funds when you were 7, he said. "One for you, one for Callista, both for education." My heart quickened. "And when you were 13, right after you went into foster care, the terms of your trust were amended." "What does that mean?" Jalen's voice turned grim. "According to the documents, your grandmother was persuaded to change the language from Collins education to family education needs. The signatures are there, but what? The notary stamp is from a different state than where your grandmother lived, and according to her medical records, she was hospitalized for early-stage dementia around that time." I closed my eyes. They manipulated her. It looks that way. And once the language was changed, they legally transferred $27,000 from your trust to Callista when you were 13. What did she do with it? He cleared his throat. "She claimed it as an entrepreneurship fund to attend a series of retreats in Florence and Prague. They were hosted by this luxury mentorship company called Ascendwell. I even found Instagram photos she posted during the trip. Hashtags like #own self-growth and #blessed. For a moment, I didn't speak. Then I whispered, "She stole my future to build her image." "I'm sorry, Kaylin." I stood up, coffee forgotten. "Don't be. You just gave me a sword." That night, I sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor, staring at the wall, weighing my options. Part of me wanted to scream the truth from rooftops. Another part, The quiet kid who'd survived by being invisible, urged caution. I called Mrs. Miller. If you had proof someone took something that was meant for you, I asked her, would you make it public? Her silence told me she understood exactly what I was asking. That depends, she finally said. Is this about justice or healing? I didn't have an answer right away. Sleep on it, she advised. Whatever you decide, we're with you. I lay awake most of the night, remembering my grandmother's words. Don't ever apologize for surviving in silence. Some people only hear you when you shout. The next night, I sat cross-legged on my bedroom floor, a ring light in front of me, a printed timeline taped to the wall behind the camera. No makeup, no background music, just me, my voice, and a decision. I titled the video Silence Isn't Consent. It was 3 minutes long, tight, calm, devastating. I didn't name names, I didn't yell. I simply laid out what happened. How money meant for a child's education was redirected under the guise of family necessity. How anonymous emails had been sent to ruin my career. How I'd been accused of abandoning the very people who left me first. I showed the parenting forum post. I showed the trust transfer document Jalen had found. I ended the video with a single line. When family forgets you're a person, you remind them in writing. Then I clicked upload. The response wasn't immediate. For 2 days, the video sat there with barely 100 views. Then on the third day, someone from a foster care advocacy group shared it. By that evening, it had 5,000 views. By the next morning, 15,000. The comments began to pour in, some shocked, some furious, many heartbreakingly familiar. My mom did the same, took my college money, and blamed me for being ungrateful. Girl, I don't even know you, but I see you. I hear you. There were skeptics too, people who suggested I was airing dirty laundry for attention, others who said family matters should stay private. A few accused me of being ungrateful, claiming I couldn't understand my parents' struggles. I didn't engage with the negative comments. I didn't need to. For every criticism, 5 supportive voices rose up. Within a week, Callista's influencer profile went private. A few hours later, Vera tried to comment on my post. You're still our daughter. We love you. We're just hurt. I hit delete. Then I hit block. That night, while heating up leftover lasagna, my phone buzzed. Jalen, you ready for what comes next? I stared at the screen. Then I typed back. I've been ready since I was 12. I just didn't know it. The applause from my video hadn't faded before another curtain lifted. The day after I blocked Vera, I received a message from a woman named Elena who ran a small nonprofit focused on advocacy for foster youth. She'd seen my video and wanted to know if I'd be willing to speak at a support group at the local community college. At first, I hesitated. Sharing my story online was one thing controlled, edited, at a distance. Speaking face-to-face with people was another level of vulnerability entirely. But I said yes. The group was small, just 12 students, all with some connection to the foster system. I stood before them, hands trembling slightly, and told my story again, this time with pauses, with breaths between the painful parts. When I finished, the room was quiet. Then a boy, maybe 19, raised his hand. How do you stop being angry? He asked. I didn't have a perfect answer. I'm still working on that, I admitted, but I've learned that anger isn't the problem. What you do with it is what matters. After the meeting, Elena asked if I'd consider becoming a regular speaker. Your story resonates, she said, and we need more voices like yours, honest but not bitter, strong but still healing. Over the next few months, I found myself speaking at more groups, connecting with other foster kids and former foster kids who were now in college. I started a small support group at Boston College. We met weekly in a corner of the student union, sharing stories and resources. It wasn't about becoming famous or getting revenge. It was about creating the support system I wished I'd had. Meanwhile, the ripples from my video continued to spread. The state foster care system invited me to participate in a panel discussion about improving support for teens in care. A local newspaper ran a feature about our campus group, and quietly, without fanfare, I watched as Callista's carefully curated online world began to crumble. First, her influencer partnerships dried up. The luxury brands that had once sent her free products stopped tagging her. Then her Wellness with Heart Foundation, a vague charity she'd started the year before, was flagged by the IRS for financial misreporting. I didn't celebrate these downfalls. I simply observed them. The way you might watch storm clouds finally breaking after a long drought. 3 months after my video went public, I received an email from Vera. Subject line: just for a little while. Kaylin, we're in a difficult spot. Could we stay with you temporarily? Just until we get things sorted? You've always been strong. We're still family. I stared at it. No apology, no admission, just assumption. I clicked forward, typed in my attorney's address, and hit send. Then I deleted it without a second thought. They hadn't just burned bridges. They'd tried to drag me across the coals. But now those flames didn't touch me anymore. The campus support group started small, just 5 of us meeting over coffee and donuts. We called ourselves Bridges because we were all trying to cross from one life to another. What began as casual meetups evolved into structured sessions. We created a resource guide for navigating financial aid without parental support. We organized workshops on building credit, finding internships, and securing housing during breaks when dorms closed. I started volunteering at Elena's nonprofit on weekends, learning the ropes of nonprofit management, grant writing, and advocacy work. It wasn't easy balancing this with classes and my tutoring job, but it felt right, like I was finally building something that mattered. Sometimes, lying awake at night, I'd wonder if helping others heal was just a way of avoiding my own healing. Was I strong or just good at pretending? Did I really forgive them? Or was I just redirecting my pain? These questions had no easy answers, but every time a freshman showed up to our group, wide-eyed and relieved to find others who understood, I knew this work was necessary regardless of my own unresolved feelings. By spring semester, our group had grown to 20 members. We'd secured a small grant from the university's diversity office to fund our workshops. The administration had even given us an official designation as a student support organization. It was during one of our weekly meetings that I met Marcus, the new advisor assigned to our group. A former social worker turned academic counselor. He'd spent 15 years in the foster care system himself before going to college. "You've built something special here," he told me after sitting in on our financial aid workshop. "But you need infrastructure if you want it to last beyond your graduation." He was right. I'd been so focused on the day-to-day that I hadn't thought about sustainability. With Marcus's guidance, we drafted bylaws, created a leadership structure, and formalized our mission to bridge the gap between foster care and higher education through peer support, resource sharing, and advocacy. We called it the Rise and Reason Initiative RISE for the upward mobility we sought. Reason for the logical, practical support we provided. It wasn't glamorous work. Most days involved answering emails, editing grant proposals, or talking students through financial aid forms. But it was real, and it was mine. That summer, I took an internship with a larger nonprofit focused on education equity. The pay was minimal, but the experience was invaluable. I learned about nonprofit governance, strategic planning, and community partnerships. When a journalist from the city paper contacted me for a story about former foster youth in higher education, I almost declined. I wasn't interested in rehashing my personal trauma for public consumption, but Marcus encouraged me to reconsider. Your story isn't just yours anymore, he said. It's a door that others might walk through. So I agreed, on the condition that the article focus more on our initiative than on my personal history. The story ran in July, from foster care to founding change, how one student's journey inspired a movement. It was thoughtful, focused on solutions rather than trauma. The reporter had done her homework, including statistics about the dismal college completion rates for foster youth and the systemic barriers they faced. The article concluded with our mission statement and contact information. Within a week, we received emails from 3 other colleges asking how they could start similar programs. It was a small victory, but significant. We weren't just helping ourselves anymore. We were creating a model others could follow. In August, an unexpected email arrived in my inbox. The subject line read, Speaker Request, Midwest Youth Leadership Forum. I nearly dismissed it as spam until I saw the sender, Dr. Amara Jackson, Executive Director of the Youth Advocacy Coalition. Dear Ms. Malden, it read, your work with the Rise and Reason initiative has come to our attention through recent media coverage. We would be honored to have you deliver the keynote address at this year's Midwest Youth Leadership Forum in Chicago this November. I read the email 3 times, convinced it was a mistake. The Midwest Youth Leadership Forum was a prestigious event that typically featured established nonprofit leaders, politicians, or celebrities with social causes, not college juniors with fledgling campus organizations. I showed the email to Marcus during our weekly check-in. It's legitimate, he confirmed after making a quick phone call. Amara is the real deal. She must have read the article. But I'm not qualified, I protested. I've never even given a formal speech. Marcus smiled. Sometimes the most powerful speakers aren't the most polished, they're the most authentic. You've lived what you'll be speaking about. That matters more than credentials. I wasn't convinced, but I tentatively accepted, figuring I had 3 months to prepare or back out if I lost my nerve. That night, I called Mrs. Miller to share the news. Oh, Kaylin, she breathed. Your grandmother would be so proud. Yeah, for some reason, that was what made it real. Not the official invitation or Marcus's encouragement, but the thought of my grandmother, who had clapped for the quiet kid, seeing that quiet kid find her voice. The weeks leading up to the forum passed in a blur of preparation. I wrote and rewrote my speech dozens of times. I practiced in front of the mirror, then in front of the Millers, then in front of our support group. Each time, I refined my message, not just my personal story, but the larger issues it represented, the flaws in our foster care system, the lack of support for transitional youth, the power of peer networks. The night before I was scheduled to fly to Chicago, I sat on my dorm room floor surrounded by note cards and drafts. My roommate, Jen, watched me with a mixture of concern and amusement. You've got this, she said, tossing me a chocolate bar. Just speak from your heart like you do in group. This is different, I said. There will be hundreds of people. Important people, Jen shrugged. They're just people who care about the same things you do. Plus, you've already faced down your own family. How scary can strangers be? She had a point. I'd stood my ground against the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. I could certainly speak to a room full of youth advocates. The forum was held at a sleek hotel in downtown Chicago. Everything about it felt overwhelming: the glass chandeliers, the professionally printed programs, the registration table staffed by efficient volunteers. I checked in and received my badge, Kaylin Malden, keynote speaker, Rise and Reason Initiative. Not volunteer, not extended family. My actual name, spelled correctly, with a title that reflected who I really was. In the speaker prep room, I met Dr. and Jackson, a tall woman with kind eyes and a firm handshake. Your story resonated with me, she said, but what really impressed us was what you've built from it. Turning pain into purpose, that's leadership. An hour before my speech, I retreated to the bathroom to steady my nerves. I stared at my reflection, at the woman I'd become not perfect, still healing, but standing. You've got this, I whispered to myself. Just tell the truth. As I emerged from the restroom and headed toward the auditorium, I froze. There in the front row stood Greg and Vera, a handmade sign between them like a high school cheer banner. We love you, Callan. My feet paused, but only for a second. The moderator's voice echoed across the auditorium. Please welcome our keynote speaker, Callan Malden. I walked forward. I don't remember the first sentence. I do remember my hands gripping the sides of the podium and the way the lights blurred just enough to hide their faces. I told them what it meant to be underestimated, to be erased, to rebuild. I didn't name names. I didn't need to, I said. I grew up being told I'd manage. Not that I'd be believed, not that I'd be helped, just that I'd survive. But surviving isn't the same as living. I paused, let the silence breathe. I was told family is who you're born to. I've learned family is who shows up for the hard parts, not just the photos. The room was still. Every word hit the carpet like weight. I ended with family is not who leaves you. It's who walks back and earns the right to stay. I stepped away as the applause rose, some slow, some teary, some stunned. But not for them, for me. Later, during the reception, I found myself near the donor slideshow. They'd put together a looping reel of photos from our initiative's earliest days before we had funding, before we had bylaws, just kids and backpacks and donated snacks. And there it was, a picture from the very first meeting. Me, 19, setting up folding chairs in a corner of the student union. Taped to my sweatshirt was a name tag from that awful cousin's birthday party. The one that once read K. Malden, volunteer. Someone had scribbled over it in Sharpie Founder. I stared at it. That label used to burn. Now it warmed. I felt them before I saw them. Vera's perfume, something powdery and expensive, wafted first, then Greg's nervous throat clearing. Sweetheart, Vera said. Her voice was soft, too soft, like she was playing a role. We're so proud of you. I turned slowly. Greg chimed in. That speech, it meant a lot to hear. Can we talk? I didn't step back. I didn't fold my arms. I simply said, you may watch, but not speak. Vera blinked, caught off guard. Kaylin, you've had your say. We've made mistakes, but you've had years to say something real. Years. Greg shifted. We made mistakes. You made choices, I corrected. And so did I. There was a long pause. Vera reached for my arm. I didn't flinch, but I didn't move either. Then I turned, not away in fear, away in peace. Near the back of the hall, I passed by a table of high schoolers chatting and flipping through the program. Someone called my name. I turned, half expecting another confrontation. But it wasn't them. It was a girl, maybe 15, braces, a notebook clutched to her chest. She said, you helped me speak today. I want to be like you. Something in me cracked, not from pain, from recognition. I smiled. Then be louder, braver, kinder. Start now. She nodded, eyes wide, and scribbled something down. And just like that, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning I chose. The girl's voice echoed in my mind as the train rolled into Boston's South Station. You helped me speak today. I want to be like you. I didn't need to answer her. She'd already felt what mattered. Back home. I slipped out of my coat and filled the kettle. The air was crisp, dry, tinged with leaves and chimney smoke. On the porch, I sat with a mug of chamomile in both hands, legs tucked beneath a thick wool blanket. October had always carried weight for me, but this time it wasn't dread. It was closure. The forum had opened doors. Invitations to speak at schools and colleges trickled in. A small foundation offered us a grant to expand our program to neighboring universities. Elena offered me a part-time position coordinating their youth outreach, but it wasn't just professional growth that marked the aftermath. It was a personal reckoning. 2 weeks after returning from Chicago, I received an email from Emma, a friend who followed social media more closely than I did. She'd sent a screenshot of a news alert Wellness with Heart Foundation flagged by IRS for financial misreporting. It was Callista's organization, the one she'd founded after her luxury entrepreneurship retreats. According to the article, several donors had reported concerns about misallocation of funds, triggering an audit. The next day, another message came from Jalen. Their accounts got frozen. Guess karma has a timeline. And finally, the email I'd been half expecting from Vera. Subject line, just for a little while. The message was brief. Kaylin, we're in a difficult spot. Could we stay with you temporarily? Just until we get things sorted. You've always been strong. We're still family. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just the assumption that blood would trump history. I forwarded it to my attorney without response. That night, I called the Millers. We talked for an hour about boundaries, forgiveness, and the difference between the two. Forgiveness doesn't mean allowing someone back into your life, Mrs. Miller said. It means not letting their actions dictate your peace. But they need help, I said, surprised by the conflict I still felt. Isn't that what we preach at Rise and Reason, supporting those who need it? Mister, Miller's voice was gentle but firm. Supporting someone doesn't mean erasing boundaries. Your organization helps people who want to change their circumstances. They just want to change their address, not their behavior. He was right. I'd spent years building a foundation of self-respect. I wouldn't compromise it now, even for the illusion of family reconciliation. 2 weeks later, a cream-colored envelope arrived in the mail, a wedding invitation from a distant cousin on Greg's side, one I barely remembered. I flipped it over. Callista's name was on the program, Honored Family Speaker. I set it on the table and let it sit for a while. The paper was expensive, the kind that smells like someone's trying too hard. That night, I wrote a card back. Thank you for thinking of me. I won't be attending, but I wish you peace. I signed it, Kaylin Morrell, founder. Morrell, my grandmother's maiden name. I'd filed the paperwork for the legal change the week after the forum. Not to erase my past, but to honor the one person who had truly seen me. The night of our nonprofit's first graduate dinner, I moved through the kitchen with practiced ease. Volunteers brought in trays of pasta and salad. Strings of warm fairy lights blinked gently above the backyard patio. At each place setting, we'd left a name tag, handwritten, spelled perfectly. One of the students, a tall, quiet girl named Lex, picked hers up. "Why do we wear these?" she asked. I smiled and said, "So you remember who you are, even if someone tries to erase it." She looked down at the card in her hand, then back at me, and nodded once. Later, as I cleaned up and stacked plates, I remembered something the envelope from my grandmother, the one with the silver key. In all the chaos of the past months, I'd never investigated what it opened. I glanced at the journal's back pocket. There, in my grandmother's handwriting, was an address for a storage unit just outside the city. The next morning, I drove out just past Cambridge. The storage facility sat quiet and unassuming between a Dollar General and an old gas station. I unlocked the unit. The metal door creaked like it hadn't moved in years. Dust swirled in a shaft of sunlight. There it was, a single box labeled in cursive for Kaylin. No one else's name, no mention of family heirlooms. Just me. I opened it carefully. On top were several letters in a familiar slanted hand. I unfolded one. You were always the one who listened, the one who noticed what others missed. Your legacy is not what they told you. Don't let them take it from you. Below the letters was a small wooden family tree carved by hand, each name etched into thin branches. My name, Kaylin Morrell, circled in gold ink. At the very bottom, taped beneath layers of tissue paper, was a sealed envelope from a bank, a safety deposit box key inside. And within that box, when I visited the bank later that week, stock certificates, bonds, a notarized letter of transfer, all in my name, all untouched. My grandmother had created a separate trust, one they couldn't touch, couldn't even find. She'd known, somehow, what might happen. I sat cross-legged on the concrete floor of the storage unit and cried, but not for pain, not for grief. I cried for the truth finally breathing. Back home that evening, I poured myself a glass of water and sat by the window, watching the street below. College students hurried to evening classes. A couple walked their dog. Life, continuing. The doorbell rang. I walked slowly to answer it, half expecting another confrontation, another plea, another demand. But when I opened it, no one stood there, just the wind curling through the empty street, brushing leaves along the steps. And in that silence, I heard something deeper, not absence, not loneliness, but freedom. The kind you earn, the kind no one gives you, the kind they can't take back. I closed the door gently and returned to my window seat. Tomorrow, there would be emails to answer, workshops to plan, students to mentor, the work of building something that would last. But tonight, in this moment, I was simply Kaylin Morrell, the girl who learned to speak after years of silence, the woman who discovered that some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. They're meant to be monuments to what you survived while crossing. Some might call it sad, this ending without reconciliation. But I knew better. This wasn't an ending at all. It was a beginning, chosen deliberately, built carefully, protected fiercely. And that was a story worth telling. And that's where we leave Callan's story, not with a traditional happy ending of tearful reunions, but with something far more powerful: freedom earned through courage and truth. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes the stories that heal us most are the ones that show us we're not alone in our struggles. What part of Kaylin's journey touched you the most? Was it when she finally broke her silence? When she built something meaningful from her pain? Or maybe when she realized family is who shows up, not just who shares your DNA? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, as Kaylin discovered, your worth isn't determined by those who left you behind. It's built by the truth you choose to stand in and the future you dare to create. If you'd like to hear more stories of resilience and transformation, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. I share new stories every Wednesday and Sunday. Until next time, this is your channel name, reminding you that sometimes the most powerful thing you can be is exactly who you are. See you in the next one.